Hello my friends, welcome to the metal shop. Today we are installing the Maker's Garage 91 to 93 GT Cobra splitter on the car. And that's what it's going to look like when it's finished. I am going to follow Jason's excellent instructions. If you recall, I mounted him to one of these grade school science fair poster board things, whatever you call these freestanding things. He gives you this giant poster of instructions, excellent instructions. I'm going to follow these step by step. So step number one is to jack the car up and put it on jack stands. And we have done that. We're up in the air on jack stands. Now I do have one additional step that I'm going to have to do before I can follow his next one, and that is to take this Mach 1 chin splitter off that I mounted several years ago. So we're going to make that happen, and then we'll get right to step two, which is removing the fog lights and the fog light bracket. Awesome. All right, so we're under the car for step two. That is remove this bolt here, which the instruction says a 1/2 inch. It is not. It is a 9/16 bolt. And then we are to unplug the fog light harness here. Now, not quite sure if you can see that there's the ubiquitous Ford tabs on either side. So you're going to need a pick tool or a small screwdriver to break those tabs off. I'm kidding, but yeah, seriously, they'll break. My car is almost 30 years old. Best case scenario, your car is 25 years old. If it's a 93, 26 years old, they'll break. They'll break. I had 3 tabs left. One was already gone, and I broke the remaining, 2 per side. I broke the remaining 3 broke. They'll give up the ghost. That's just what you get with old plastic. So, by the way, these instructions are going to be real, okay? It's not going to be like, oh, this was an easy, quick 15-minute project here. Even with breaking the tabs, this passenger side did come apart pretty easily. The driver's side was a bear, even to pull it apart. You don't need, without the tabs, don't worry about these coming apart. They will not come apart. And you take this bolt out, and then after, okay, there's the fog light assembly that you're going to remove. There's that 9/16 bolt. Okay, there's this. There's the harness. Those are the 3 tabs that broke off. And I'm going to be real here, folks. This bolt is hard to reach, hard to get, and quite honestly, I'm not sure why this bracket has to even come off, because the fog light bracket will unbolt from it separately. So we shall see. So I'm going to get right to it. All right, my friends, back under the car for step 3, which is to remove 1, 2, 3, and 4 behind me. Can't see bolts holding the fog light bracket to the bumper cover. So that's labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to do these. I think these are big, like 9/16 or 5/8. So anyway, these are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 on the other side. We'll be able to remove the fog light bracket and this giant heavy bracket right here. So step 3, onward. All right, so step 3 is complete. The fog light bracket is removed. This is a big, heavy, galvanized piece. There were those 3/8 inch screws. They're really more like a self-tapping large 3/8 inch screw that go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see the curve to it as well. This is, like I said, this is a big, heavy bracket. Don't be surprised by how big and rugged that thing is. I'm going to leave those brackets in. Quite honestly, removing that bolt, which I already did on both sides, was a giant pain in the butt. And getting the other one from the back side won't be so bad, but I cannot see any earthly reason why that bracket needs to be removed for the installation. If I'm wrong, I will let you know and I will say so, but do yourselves a favor. If this works out, don't bother removing that tiny little bolt that you're lucky you can get one click on your ratcheting wrench to remove. So here's everything that we're up to at this point. Keep everything nice and neat and labeled by side. This is the fog light bracket. Now look at that. That is a nice, very nice piece of aluminum. So we're on to step 4, which is I am going to tape off the underside for making marks with a pencil as to where to drill. Now, the underside of mine is already full of holes from the other splitter, from that Mach 1 splitter that I ran. What do you think the chances that any of those holes will line up? Can we lay odds? I'll let you know if any of those line up, or how many line up. I'm gonna bet 0. 0 will line up. I'll get to drill all new holes. So we're taping this off. We're gonna mark it, and then we're going to test fit the splitter. Awesome. All right, so we're on to step 5, which is going to be fitting the splitter up against the car. It's taped off to mark the holes for drilling, but I wanted to show you just how much care went into Jason from Maker's Garage sending me my hardware. I mean, to say that this guy's meticulous is a giant understatement. I mean, this is foam and it's been like hot glued together, okay? There's more in here, more hot glued foam, another piece there, a little piece of cardboard as a spacer, another little piece of foam went into this. And this is what goes into your building your part as well. Now look at this. Another little piece of foam in here. These are your stickers, your Maker's Garage decals. Sweet. Very nice. There are the pencils. You can see those, the right angle pencils that he makes. It's like a dowel, and he's got like a little pencil tip there that you use for, you know, for marking those holes. So that's pretty sweet. Look at this. Mini clamps. This is what I need. I need the clamps to hold the splitter in place. He includes these mini clamps for that. Okay? Everything is marked. Allen head bolts, 4. Those are going to be to hold the splitter to the bracket. These are the U-nuts. And this is all OE style hardware. I mean, this is all as good, if not better, than OE hardware. More U-bolts. I mean, this is just nuts. The lengths that that he goes to. And this is what you can expect when you buy a new splitter from Maker's Garage. All right, on to fitting the splitter. All right, so there's the first look of the splitter, test fitted, just with those mini clamps. Right now, I've gone back and forth quite a few times, making sure that it's lined up properly. This is step 6 and 7. 6 is just fitting it up there, and 7 is getting it, make sure it's aligned properly. Not sure exactly how this is going to work. I do have a little bit of a gap here. It's the same exactly on both sides, where I guess when I put the U-nuts there and sandwich it together, I'm not sure if it's designed like that. You know, there's variances in the urethane bumpers, and maybe there's variances in this. I did fit up this piece inside because I had to make sure that it was aligned properly forwards and backwards, and I'll show you why. This is actually designed for a 91 to 93 car. And you guys in the know that the 91 to 93 cars had slightly larger wheel openings to accommodate bigger wheels. This is an 89, so the design of these, there's differences. The 87 to 89 is designed, it adds another inch or so to the back, so it will be perfectly flush. I knew that when I purchased this. I got mine used when Makers was no longer manufacturing these, and it was looking like they were never going to again. I'm fine with this. I got a really good price on mine used. That's why I had to buy the hardware separately. The seller that I bought this from had lost the hardware. I don't mind this little step. I think it's kind of a nice accent, and quite honestly, there's a lot of splitters are like this. The Mach 1 that I took off was also like this, and I think it provides, you know, kind of a nice detail. I did purchase the Cobra Fender extensions that are this much shorter. I can have those painted black. I can swap these out. I think there's some metal and metal work that would have to be done there. I kind of like this detail for now. So what I need to do at this point is, oops, I bumped it, it didn't move. So I need to mark the holes with this pencil. And quite honestly, if you didn't have a right angle pencil like this, it would be impossible, because this is solid underneath. So I don't know how you'd ever reach in there to mark the holes up on the taped portion without that right angle pencil. So I'm gonna get a couple of people out here. I'm gonna get my shop assistant Brady out here to help. I'm just going to put a second set of eyeballs on here and make sure that it's properly aligned. I just want to get a second opinion before I pencil mark those holes and before I start drilling. I think it looks good. I've measured it 1,600 times, and I think it is right where it needs to be. Okay, so we're on to step 10, which is applying the U-nuts along the inserts here. Now, they fit super snug. I just tested one out. You're going to need a hammer to tap those on. We're all drilled here. Oh, anybody care to guess from the Mach 1 splitter, which had 15 of those kind of push-in Christmas tree clips, anyone care to guess how many holes carried over to this splitter? Murphy's Law is strong in effect today. The force with Murphy was strong today. 0. Not a single hole lined up. 23 holes I had to drill out to 11:30 seconds, which seems very large, but I get what he's doing. You know, he's giving you adjustment any direction, you know, because, you know, mounting this, which is pretty rigid, up to a urethane bumper, there's going to require, you know, a little bit of fudging around back and forth. I tried to use a right angle drill attachment. That mine just is junk. It doesn't work. I need a new one. I use a Brad point bit. He recommends using a step drill bit. The Brad point worked really nice because it would stick into the urethane bumper and not walk. So I did that. The pencil marking was a pain with those right angle pencils, and he says to clean this stuff off too. I like it. I like to leave it on, honestly. You know why? It acts like a tiny little locking, a little bit of Loctite, a little locking fastener deal. There's shards everywhere. It was okay using the right angle pencil. It was hard, but you know, then when I took the splitter off, I was like, oh, all the marks were there, and we got all the holes drilled. So we're gonna get the U-nuts put on the splitter, and then we're gonna put it back in place with the little mini clamps and bolt the thing into place. Stand by. All right, my friends, it's the next day in the metal shop here. We're continuing on with step 11, which is bolting the splitter to the car. He does recommend in the instructions that you hand tighten all of the bolts first and then go back and torque them. There's 23 bolts, which is kind of overkill. Probably could have gotten away with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 10, 12 would probably have been sufficient. So he says obviously you don't need to over tighten them. There are 17 longer bolts and 6 shorter bolts. He recommends using the shorter bolts on the corners here. That's what it says to do in the instructions, and that's fine. But I did find that in the very back here, the shorter bolts were not long enough to grab. So I used a longer bolt there. I would pick a spot, you know, where the short bolts, where it's completely flush and nice and square, to use those short bolts. here are the tools that you'll need. This is 10mm socket. You can reach some of them with a socket. Some of them you'll need the ratcheting wrench. They're up in here. They're hard. They are hard to get to. Get yourself an awl. This is just a punch, just so you can line up those holes that you drilled in your urethane bumper. Line them up with the U-nuts. Now the holes are oversized in this. You drilled oversized holes, so you can stick the awl in there and kind of fish around and get it to line up properly. You're going to need to take your time there. Now I'm not sure what's going to happen here. The carbon fiber has very little give to it. Carbon fiber is pretty hard. So the urethane will give a little bit. I think that I'm probably gonna end up with a little bit of a gap here, possibly, that was unintended. So I'm gonna take my time, and I'm gonna get the rest of the bolts started by hand and then torque them. And that is step 11. All right, we are on to step 12, which is sneaking this fog light bracket in. That's the word that Jason put on the instructions, sneaking. I think it'll go in just fine. I did get all the bolts. It wasn't too bad once I really took my time. Used that awl for that punch in this case to get the holes lined up. Did have some carnage. He gave me one extra of the U-nuts. I broke a couple of them, but they broke in such a way that they would still tighten. And curiously, they both broke right in this area where the carbon fiber, it wasn't conforming to the top. It was kind of looped down. And once I realized what was happening, is I just used the vice grips here and pinched up the carbon fiber to close that gap, and they went in fine. But that happened on both sides, so you have been warned. I did try this, the right angle screwdriver, a couple of spots where it was tight, just to get the hole kind of lined up. I'm sorry, but you need the long bolts here. So using the short bolts there in the corner, I'm not even sure. I get why, because here there's a bolt that attaches the fender extension here, and it's really hard to get to. I was able to thread it in enough by hand and then get the wrench onto it. Anyway, sorry, we're going to sneak that fog light bracket in, get that bolted down, and then we're going to go to work on this splitter support bracket. All right. On to step 13, which is reinstalling the fog lights and the fog light brackets. And I've said this a couple of times in this video, don't bother removing these. It's completely unnecessary. Save yourself a lot of aggravation. Getting to that bolt is extremely difficult. The other one's from the back side. It's okay, but it's probably rusty. These do not need to come out. So we're going to reinstall the fog lights, and then the last step is going to be reinstalling this bracket, which is pretty self-explanatory. This side here is going to attach to the splitter. It's got some nice stainless button head bolts that will go here. These slotted will point up like so, and you will use your factory screws to hold this to the bumper cover where it attaches to that fog light brace that we just put back in. That was a little bit tricky because you're kind of installing it inside the space of the splitter itself. You can just barely fit a socket in there to get those bolts, two on either side, tight. It is pretty heavy. Have a friend help you hold that thing up if you can. Resist the urge to rest it inside the carbon fiber pocket. It will rest in there nicely, but that bracket is heavy, and it is not carbon fiber, and that giant span like that is not enough to support it. So I'm going to mount back in the fog lights, and then we'll go underneath the car and we'll bolt in that bracket, that reinforcement bracket, and then we will be done. One tiny little quick performance note. Make sure that you have, and disregard what you see there, those are holes from the old splitter. Make sure you have all those bolts there along the center, all along the front. good and tight the way you want them, just snug, so there's no gap in there. I saw one, I'm just a perfectionist, I wanted to give it a little bit of a snug up, but once that fog light bracket is reinstalled, you are not reaching in there to tighten up any of those bolts. Just a real little quick performance note there. So pretty hard to get the shot under here, but this is the splitter. There's a bumper cover right here where it attaches to the fog light bracket right there. So this kind of it's fitted in place thusly. And that was a critical measurement when I was putting the splitter on, was making sure that the holes lined up. Since mine, like I said, isn't butted up all the way against the back here, remember there's that gap, that would be a critical measurement. If it was butted up here against the back, then this here would naturally fall into place. So I'm going to fumble around under here on my back. Another pro tip here: if you could do this job on a lift, it could be done in half the time. Okay, easily half the time. But there you see how the bracket fits in place. That is a super nice piece, very well made. I don't think I'm going to have any issues with this whatsoever. Famous last words. Stand by. Hello, my friends. Welcome to step 15. That's putting your car back on the ground, wiping off your new splitter with a microfiber cloth, and admiring your work. I am sitting here with a cold drink. I am beat. They said the instructions said to set aside 3 to 4 hours. I probably did about 6 hours. Now, I could have easily cut the time in half if I'd had a lift. A little bit of rusty bolts issue, unplugging the wiring harness on the fog lights was an issue. So if you can, some tips: put it on a lift. If you cannot, put it as high as you possibly can on jack stands, and be smarter than me, stay away from that edge at the end of your garage. Put that thing far enough back so you can have a nice flat surface for your creeper to roll around on. The fog lights. You do not have to remove that bracket. I've said this several times. Don't bother. That's a pain in your butt that you don't need to deal with. Remember that last step where I said I shouldn't have any problems putting the bracket, the support bracket on the back? That was possibly the most difficult part of the installation. And the only reason that it was difficult is because you're sandwiching that bracket between the splitter and the bumper cover and that fog light bracket. And the bumper cover, if mine's a 30-year-old car, is wavy, and the 3/8 screws, bolt head screws that you're using to fasten that, they're not long enough. If included in the kit, if there'd been 4 more of the bolts that we use to hold the splitter onto the car, those were nice and long. Those actually would have been perfect. It's a Sunday here. There's no way I was going to go to a hardware store. I managed to get 3 of them. 2 in the center were okay. 1 on the outside with quite a bit of force. The last one, I put my floor lift under that thing, under the bracket with a piece of wood on it, and I pushed up on it so I could get that last bolt in. That, you plan ahead. Either, hopefully I'll speak to Jason, maybe he'll include some extra long bolts in the kit, or plan ahead and go to the hardware store and have the extra bolts, and they should have a washer on them as well. The nice bolts that used to hold the splitter in place have those built-in washers on them, and the factory bolts are going through that slotted section of that reinforcing bracket, and no washer, and you certainly couldn't use one because, like I said, you don't have enough space. So this is not an easy DIY project for the home hobbyist. If you don't have a serious set of tools and the mechanical skill to go with them, it's going to be practically an impossible installation. And I'm not trying to be negative here. The product speaks for itself. That's the most beautiful looking splitter for the Foxbody Mustang in existence, in my opinion. That is built for the car, and kind of a squarish in nature, and that is just beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful than that. as far as a splitter is for this car. This looks mean. This looks aggressive. It just looks fantastic. Say hi, George. George, say hi. No, not even gonna look up. Like I said, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to be discouraging, but this, like I said, this is not a project for the weekend hobbyist. This took quite a bit of effort and quite a bit of skill to get this thing mounted on. I think the results are well worth it. As always, my friends, I'd like to thank you for watching. I appreciate your support, and I'm gonna, I got plenty more Jeep videos, plenty more Mustang videos coming. Please, if you're new to the channel, click that subscribe, hit the like for me, please. Share this video with your friends. Tell your friends about my channel. I sincerely appreciate the support. I can speak. All right, my friends, take care. Bye-bye.